Hello everyone, Mike Rutherford here. Glad to be back as your facilitator and host for Missouri Teacher Development System, Artisan Teacher On-Demand Learning Series. This is a series of episodes where we take artisan teacher themes that are particularly well aligned to your MTDS competencies and take 20 minutes or so just to work through them so that we can be even more effective as teachers, recognizing our talents and strengths, being more aware of them, being more conscious, and being more intentional about our pedagogical and craft decisions that we're making during instruction. As you may remember, the Artisan Teacher series is based on the Artisan Teacher, a field guide to skillful teaching. This series is based on over 50,000 classroom observations over a period of more than 15 years, where we basically spend enough time in enough classrooms observing excellent teachers and waiting for those excellent teachers to have a particularly excellent moment of instruction. So Artisan Teacher is what? A list of themes, a list of names of what were great teachers doing when they were having a particularly great moment of instruction. And could we name those things? And so there are 23 of those. And we're using some of those to connect back to your MTDS competencies. Today we're going to take a look at an Artisan Teacher theme called Time and Timing. Time and timing is the ability of the teacher not really to alter or change the lesson plan that much to optimize learning, but to take a look at the timing and the time frame of our lessons. The notion of time and timing, the real essential attributes of the concept is sometimes it's not what you do. It's the timing of what you do. It's when you do it. Or it's how long you do it. Or it's where in a sequence of things you do it. Or it's how long you take between doing it and doing something else. Sometimes what really makes a lesson zing isn't just the lesson, it's the teacher's timing of the lesson, right? Let's imagine some examples of that, just the concept of time and timing. One of the things I think is important is before we consider any theme or principle and apply it to our classrooms, it ought to work in the rest of the universe too, right? There ought to be some evidence that this principle, right, works most of the time. I got my car washed the other day, and then it rained. Bad timing, right? There's nothing wrong with getting your car washed. I think we should all wash our car from time to time. It preserves its value, makes it look better, it's cleaner, more enjoyable to drive. So it wasn't that what I did was ineffective, it was just that I timed it wrong. As soon as I got the car wash, it rained on it and it had water spots, and well, I didn't go back and rewash it, but I probably could have. Buying and selling stocks, if you do this as a part of your investment portfolio, it has a lot to do with timing, right? So there's nothing inherently good or bad about buying shares of stock or selling them. It really is all about the timing, right? You want to buy low and sell high. You don't want to buy high and sell low. Buying and selling, it's not that can optimize your investments. It's the notion of the timing of that, right? Sometimes when I'm going somewhere in the car, it's not the route that I should think of, it's the timing of the trip, right? So I know how to get from Charlotte to Atlanta. I live in Charlotte. I go to Atlanta quite often on business. I know how to get there, but you know what makes a lot of difference? Is timing when I leave. Atlanta's got bad traffic and Charlotte has bad traffic too. So if I time my departure and my arrival at just the right amount of time, then a good trip can even be better. Get the idea? Let's take a pause, and what I'd like for you to do is to imagine some additional examples of how time and timing works. Not in classrooms, let's do that a bit later. Let's just think about life in general. Let's just think about how the universe works. Can you generate some examples of when it's not what you do, but the timing of what you do that optimizes it, that makes it either particularly effective or particularly ineffective? We'll take a break. The screen, you'll just stop your video right here. Try to imagine 2 or 3 examples. When you have some in mind, then click play again, and we'll continue. Welcome back. Thanks for your good work in generating examples of the concept of time and timing. So let's take that concept, that often it's not the thing itself, but rather it's the timing of the thing that makes the difference. And let's take that into classrooms. Let's take it into your classroom, your age, your grade level, your subject area, and let's imagine and sharpen up some tools of time and timing that can help us to be even more effective with our students. I want to show you a quick diagram of how time and timing work. So if we think about the concept of time and timing, it's 2 ideas, right? Time and timing. Time is the study of duration. Timing is the study of transition and readiness. So there are really 3 concepts about how we can apply time and timing back to our classroom observations. The first concept is how long should something last, the duration of a lesson. And then under timing, let's take a look at segue, at interval, about transition, and let's also think about readiness, about when in the day the right timing for something may be. So time and timing is the concept, 3 application points: duration, transition, and readiness. Let's first of all think about the notion of duration. So, when we're teaching a lesson, well, how long should it last? Is it 8 minutes? Is it 3 minutes? Does it depend on the student's attention span? Does it depend on the time of the day? Is there an optimal length of the duration of an effective lesson? Well, we know that lessons can be too short, right? That we can cut them so short that students don't learn the critical information that they need. And we also know that lessons can be too long, that they accomplish 90% of what they were going to accomplish in the first few minutes, and now we're just treading water. As teachers, we've all found ourselves in that situation. I've always found that a good way to gauge what the length of an instructional element should be to optimize it is to think about the energy level of your classroom. So let's look at a diagram of energy over time and how that can help us to make some good decisions on the duration of a lesson. So a simple diagram, right? Let's let T represent time, E represents energy. And so this is a graph of energy over time about the duration of any one instructional element that we might be using in the classroom. And so what this means is that when we begin an instructional element, there's a certain energy level to it, right? It starts, let's say, about here. And then if it's a well-designed lesson, then students start to get the hang of it, they start to enjoy it, they start to get into it, and the energy level in the students and in the classroom rises. Now, there's no lesson that's so brilliant that it just keeps rising, right? All lessons eventually flatten out, and if we don't end them pretty soon, they kind of go back down to the baseline where the energy level began at the beginning of the lesson. So the real question then is, for us as teachers, as skillful instructors, is when on this curve would be the best time to end it. So most people that take a look at this would say the best time to end a lesson is at the peak. That way you get all the good and none of the bad. I wouldn't argue with that, except for this. How do you know when the peak is? Because unless you can see into the future and you're clairvoyant in some way, the only place you can see the peak from is after you've passed it. So if you're watching for the peak and waiting for the peak, you're going to miss the peak. And if you miss the peak even by just a little bit, look at this part of the line right here. That's a descending energy curve, which means whatever you do next, you're going to have to turn things around because the energy level in the classroom is on its way down. It's descending. Let's say you were lucky and you hit the peak. Well, even at the peak, the the slope of the line that's asymptotic to that point is just flat. So it's a flat energy curve. So you know the answer to the question, don't you? When should we end almost all instructional elements in our classroom? It's before they peak. Yeah, if we end them before they peak, we're gonna maybe, waste a little bit of high energy. But look what happens. If we end the lesson segment here before the peak, see that the slope of that line is going up. So what is it that we transition into the next instructional element? We transition ascending energy. As we think about what should be the duration of any one instructional element, a good way of thinking about that is the energy curve. We'd like to hit the peak. That's hard to predict. So we should, bring an end to most instructional elements just a little bit before they peak. You know, students are sometimes give us some clues as to when we've hit the peak and when we've missed it, right? You can almost tell. And when you end an instructional element right before the peak, sometimes students will protest a little. You know, we'll say, who needs a little more time? And every hand will shoot in the air. I just need a little bit more time. Be careful at that moment. Almost always the correct answer to, can I have a little bit more time, is, let me think about it. No, let's keep going, right? Because what you want to do is you want to transition the ascending energy curve into that next element of your instruction. Now, as you lay curve on top of curve on top of curve, right, in a morning's instruction or an afternoon's instruction, if we're ending most instructional elements before the peak and transferring positive energy rise into the next element, that's a pretty engaging morning or afternoon of instruction. The first element in time and timing is to be really good at deciding, when should I bring this to an end? What's the right time for that? The second thing we want to talk about under timing is the concept of interval or segue or transition, right? How much time should I allow between two instructional elements? Should it be a snappy transition where I go right from A right to B so that I don't waste any classroom time? Or should I have a little think time? Should there be a little palate cleanser in between A and B? Should I wait until after lunch to come back to B, or maybe even put in a long weekend? This is the study of transition. Let's go back to the chart and look at another way of thinking about how transition works. So I know this is an oversimplification of this, but